This is a story that came out last night, and there's some nuance to this story. So we're going to kind of march through where the story has gone from and where we're going to and where we sit right now. This is WGN. This is Ben Bradley. And he's the one that has really kind of investigated a whole bunch of the Dalton drama, the dictator of Dalton. And so now you might think you've seen this story before, but got to remember, Tiffany Henyard she's employed by two different entities. You got the village of Dalton, and then you've got the township of Thornton. And so we're going to walk through just real quick, kind of where we were, because it's important to where we sit right now. And this is one more story that is breaking that is like, oh, yeah, oh boy, they spent some money, didn't they? So for months, Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard's administration repeatedly refused to release spending records in violation of the state's government transparency laws. Even when Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul's office ordered the village to turn over documents, Henyard and her allies took no action. This is that story. Dalton misses deadline for release of spending records. Last year, WGN Investigate sent the village of Dalton a public records request, and what did they do? Yeah, they basically said, no, we're not responding to your request. We're just going to ignore it. And so they did. And so then what WGN was forced to do, WGN's parent company filed a lawsuit. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. That's better. WGN's parent company filed a lawsuit in Cook County Circuit Court forcing the issue. And so now, in response, a judge recently ordered Dalton to release dozens of pages of documents, including months worth of credit card statements. This is Dalton now. This is Dalton. This is not Township of Thornton. We already went through Township of Thornton, and that's where Lori Lightfoot, she had credit card statements and she had bank statements for Thornton, but not for Dalton. So now we're kind of matching up those pieces of Dalton to Thornton, and a review of those records shows Henyard and her allies spent tens of thousands of dollars on first-class flights, airline upgrades, high-end hotels, Uber Eats, and more. There was a receipt for some like cowboy shop in Austin, Texas. Let's go get some cowboy hats, something like that. So these statements cover a 5-month span from July to November of 2023. Okay. So we've run through all that. WGN sues Dalton for refusing to release the spending records. So this is all based on court action. And so now WGN has finally got the Freedom of Information requests that they've been asking for from the village of Dalton. Village of Dalton has not given out anything. Township of Thornton? Yeah, they have. Township of Thornton, bigger entity. It's the biggest township in Chicago, in Illinois, I believe. And so Dalton, being a small village with 23,000 people, it kind of acts as its own little deal. And Super Mayor has more control in the village of Dalton than she does in the township of Thornton. But money is being spent on both ends. And now we're matching up. All right, here's what Thornton, Township of Thornton. Here's what Village of Dalton. And so fine dining, first class travel costing taxpayers in South suburbs. This was back in January. This story right here. And it looks just like the story we're looking at right now, but it's not, because you got two different entities. So that's kind of where we sit. And let's, before we go any further, we're going to play a handful of clips, because who doesn't want to watch some video, right? This is a classic one.
I do not handle anything as relates to with credit cards. As you heard me speak today in my board meeting about, I do not handle that.
Some of those charges are for you, though.
No, sir.
You didn't go to Las Vegas? What is that?
No comment.
You don't know if you were in Las Vegas?
Of course I do.
Were you?
It's not paid by them.
Did you fly first class to Las Vegas?
Any other questions?
When Henyard hits the
That to me was one of the most awkward exchanges between a politician and a reporter ever. Ben Bradley did a really good job hanging in the pocket and just asking the most direct questions. That was November of 2023. Let's skip ahead to the next segment here.
Let's look at one trip to Austin, Texas in July of last year. 5 people, including Mayor Henyard, for 5 days. While we previously reported the township was billed $27,000, we now know the actual cost was more than $47,000 when you factor in what Dalton taxpayers were charged. It includes nearly $1,000 spent at an Austin Walgreens and a sports riding apparel store. The only explanation for any of the travel was that it was to attend a conference.
I'm sure you guys had an awesome time on the backs of taxpayers, but what do we gain from any of these trips? We gain nothing.
And that is absolutely that's the point, right? It's what we get from this. Now, what we're going to see in a little bit is you're going to see a specialist that deals with this kind of municipal corruption. And what she is saying is, and what I believe is that Tiff is somehow going to spin this as they went to conferences, right? They went to conferences. She's somehow going to spin this with some kind of quasi legitimate, hey, we went on a business conference. You know, did they plan ahead well enough to actually identify a business conference? And then they're taking these groups of people, staying at nice hotels, eating at nice restaurants, buying some stuff, buying some Amazon stuff, you know, just like they did in Township of Thornton. But now this is Village of Dalton. Will they be able to spin this in such a way that, you know, it gets through an auditor? No, but that's going to happen anyway, right?
Get it from us because definitely we will have questions.
Mayor Henyard is in a situation where she feels like she's under attack because she is.
Bo Brinley is Henyard's criminal defense attorney, hired after the FBI served subpoenas on the village and township earlier this year. He blames Henyard's top aide, Keith Freeman.
Keith Freeman made the decision on how these funds are being used. Keith Freeman is going on these trips. You understand, this is a new mayor. This is someone that is new to this job.
But she never thought, hey, I shouldn't fly first class. I shouldn't stay at the Four Seasons.
If there was a problem with any of that, if that's not how you're supposed to do it, she relied on Freeman to tell her. He's telling her this is how we do things.
How things were.
See these things.
That is a stretch at best, folks, because captain goes down with the ship, right? The super mayor, dictator of Dalton, she's the captain. And all of a sudden, you've got Keith Freeman, who is under indictment for bankruptcy fraud. All of a sudden, he is cooperating. He is a whistleblower. And now her defense attorney, and you got to remember, Tiffany Henyard has not been charged with any crimes yet, but she's got a defense attorney, that's who we just saw. And he's basically stating it's not her fault. Keith Freeman, he's the guy that you need to look at, that guy. So with Tiffany Henyard's attorney really trying to throw the blame on Keith Freeman, it's because they know, you know, something's coming. I mean, and she can't shift off all the blame for this because ultimately she's the mayor. She's making these decisions. You can't blame somebody and say, yeah, I went on this trip and I'm the mayor, but I just wasn't responsible for any of it. Somebody has to make decisions. And that's the person on the top. That's the mayor. It's the super mayor, right? So all of a sudden, the super mayor, per her own attorney, goes from being super mayor to she's a new mayor. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's just asking for Keith Freeman's advice, and he's giving it to her because he's got more years doing this, but he's not the mayor. You know, the whole thing is just it's so convoluted and upside down that it's laughable.
The Keith Freeman made decisions and reported to the mayor, this is what we're doing. The mayor trusted him until she didn't.
About that. This is me talking to people that understand business, that understand finance.
Back to those Dalton credit cards. They include nearly $25,000 charged in 5 months without explanation to places like Walmart, Target, and Jewel. There was $5,000 spent at local restaurants and Uber Eats. And Tiffany Henyard's personal photographer charged the village $3,400.
What I think is interesting about this case, this story, is you can be highly legal and unethical at the same time.
Kelly Richmond Pope is an accounting professor who has investigated municipal spending. She says the brazenness is what caught her eye.
Who does this? Who lives this way so out loud? It's almost like, I dare you to ask. I dare you to ask me. And I'm just shocked that a leader would think that they could get away with this type of behavior and that no one's going to ask them about it.
That was some of my thoughts when I first started following this story. Is that first clip that we saw when Ben Bradley was asking her about, so did you flew first class? Did you go to Vegas? And she's like, and she's looking over at Keith Freeman and didn't even do that. She just kind of went like that, rolled her, turned her eyes to the side. And, just the absolute brazenness of her being willing to spend that money. And then basically if somebody questions her on it, like Ben Bradley did in that clip, then it's just so awkward. I mean, not having followed this story from the origins, there's quite a few YouTubers that have way more experience with this storyline than I do. I'm over here in Seattle, upper left USA. And I'm seeing these stories come in. I'm like, there's no way. This has got to be a scripted reality show, because that's what it looks like. Were you in Las Vegas? Next comment, or no comment. And when Ben Bradley asks her, what was that? He was asking her in response to her response. He was asking her, what kind of response is that? I mean, I just asked you a pointed question and I'm chasing you around the courthouse, not the courthouse, but where they're having their meeting. And that was kind of, I think, Ben Bradley's last interview with the supermayor, that was confrontational like that, kind of on the fly. And then the supermayor basically started, she just has not given out any interviews. And what interviews she has given out, they've been on these PR campaigns and they're just full of a bunch of nonsense, just total nonsense. So Dalton trustee Tammy, that's the individual who was saying, what are we getting out of this? Henyard hid it from us because we would definitely have questions, Brown said. And what I am thinking is, when I'm watching this story, I'm thinking questions, you're going to be wildly upset. But somehow within the supermayor, the dictator of Dalton, Tiffany Henyard, within her crew, they're going to come up with some nonsense that's going to be like, okay, so you went to Atlanta, you went to Austin, they went to Portland. They went to New York City, and there is virtually there's no online, presence. There's no, they didn't show anything recording. Hey, this is what we're getting. Hey, taxpayers, for all your money that we're being spent, $100,000 total between Thornton and Dalton. This is what you're getting for your money. There's no accounting for that. But for the supermayor's charity, I mean, she's just got video after video after video, right? Which she now disavows that is her charity. So you've got this narrative where you're like, what? We're doing what? But I think very soon the supermayor is going to come out with, and I think she is waiting for whatever's going to come up with the FBI. She wants to see all of her pieces, all of the pieces that are going to come out on her. And then she will respond and she'll come out with some kind of response like, we were on a conference where we're going to do this. But since we haven't heard anything about that, my thought is that she is waiting to see where the chips fall. And maybe they fall in such a way that she just gets arrested and boom, she's gone. Don't know. I mean, it could be like that. But with taking you are allowed as politicians and as, owner of a business, employees of a business, you can take trips and you can have them paid by a municipality or your employer. But the level at which Tiffany Henyard, her spending has gone, that's where it gets, sketchy. Hey, you bought 14 cowboy hats for $400 or 2 cowboy hats, however much a cowboy hat is. I don't know. I don't even know what they're buying, right? We don't really know. We don't have the details of those receipts. But so based on a review of Dalton's credit card statements, WGN Investigates found village taxpayers were charged an additional over the top of, let me get my little yellow pointer here, on the top of the $67,000, that was last January. $67K is what WGN came up with township credit cards, not village credit cards. So now we're an additional $33 for $100K in just stuff. Now, one of the accusations that they stay in, really expensive hotels. The Four Seasons in Austin is expensive, like $650 a night base. What was the other one? The other one was, I think, also in Austin. I think it was the Fairmont Austin. And it was like a $250 a night hotel. One was 4.5 star and one was 4.7 stars. But you know what? Bottom line is if you're on taxpayer dime and you're on company business, you're going to be open to scrutiny for those kind of charges. So why not stay at, Tom Baudette's hotel, right? We'll leave the light on for you because you don't need, how about like, I don't know, one of those long-term stays where you get a little kitchenette in your place. You pay a little bit more, but you get, you can stay there for a while and you don't have to eat out every single meal. But that would defeat the purpose of Tiffany Henyard's trips, which is she wants to spend a bunch of money. It looks like go to Ruth Chris Steakhouse, which is a good steakhouse and it's expensive, but it's not absolute top tier, right? So she didn't go crazy, but she spent a lot of money, spent $100,000. Charges include $11,609 at the high-end Fairmont Austin Hotel. Okay. That's the $250 a night. But, she had a crew of people with her. And so she's got, I think on some of these trips, she had Township of Thornton, like 3 folks from the Township of Thornton, and then Keith Freeman and herself. And it was a mayor type deal. She's mayor of the village of Dalton. She had some of this, hey, let's put some of this expenses on Dalton and let's put some of them on Township of Thornton, even though the event is going to be the conference. And we haven't heard what these conferences are. There's nowhere out there that indicate what the conferences were for, because that is legit. You can do that. That can be a legit expense. If you're going to some kind of development conference, if you're going to meet other mayors, okay, and you guys are going to decide something and come up with something, all right, okay. But there's been nothing that has been given to the taxpayers of either Thornton or Dalton indicating what they're getting for their $100K of spending, especially at Walgreens. $413 at a local Walgreens. Now, when I saw that, I was thinking to myself, man, when I go to Walgreens, I spend like, I want to say like $80 because I go there like once a quarter or something. I don't go, there for grocery shopping. And I was thinking, what? I know you can spend $413 on, but what do they buy? What did they buy? 14 cans of hairspray? I don't know. I find Walgreens to be pretty expensive, and I actually buy stuff off of Amazon now versus going to Walgreens because my local Walgreens has just become, it's become a place where the homeless people who live a couple blocks down the hill come to steal stuff. And I'm just not down with being in the same store with whacked out crazy people on drugs stealing stuff. So I will literally now buy stuff on Amazon. So I was thinking $413. All right. Okay. What are you buying? What are you buying that the township or the village needs so desperately that you use the credit card for? Officials have not said why they traveled other than to attend conferences. All right. let's get a little, just throw us a bone. Tell us a scooch about these shenanigans at the conferences. Well, we know Vegas. We know what happened in Vegas. A young lady is, allegedly got sexually assaulted. That is one of the big stories. So we know that's happening. What happens in Vegas didn't stay in Vegas. It came home with them. But what are the actual, who knows? We have no idea. So the supermayor is going to have to do a little bit of, she's going to have to do a little bit of an end run and provide some more details if she wants to keep this somewhat legit, like to even have a fighting chance that some of these expenses are okay. But like the lady who, she's a specialist on municipal spending, like she said, this is so brazen. And when questioned about it, Tiffany Henyard she's like, next question, just taunting Ben Bradley to investigate further. And he did. And he just kept at it. And this that I'm reading you today is the end result of, all right, if you're not going to give us the Freedom of Information request that we asked for, way back in February and then, court date in March, and you guys blew past that. So I'm just going to keep digging down, and he did. And so finally, this is the end result of that. I'm sure you guys had an awesome time on the backs of taxpayers. We heard Brown say that, who was not on the trips. But what do we gain from any of these trips? We gain nothing. And that's why I think, if there was a little bit of truth to any of these spending patterns, okay, all right, okay, we can make that happen. But it's just been so brazen. It's been the shenanigans have just happened one after another with no defense. And that to me is almost like, catch me if you can. I'm Nino Brown. I dress like Nino Brown, even though I'm going to claim it was a skit from Martin. Like what? Nobody's buying this. But what Tiffany is buying, $24,000, almost $25K at Walmart and Target, $14,425 at Amazon. Again, Amazon rears its ugly head. Amazon, what are you buying at Amazon? Are you just buying stuff that people in your crew need or want, or what are you getting? I kind of want to know, right? I'm sure you do too. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't care. Like, they spent a lot of money. $5,000 at Uber Eats. Okay, I get that one. But $5K. That's a lot. You got to work at $5K at Uber Eats, right? You got to go to that well often. All right, guys, breakfast time. Let's Uber Eats in, right? $3,500 for Henyard's personal photographer. Well, that's because, lots and lots of photo shoots. And whenever she shows up, she is dressed to the nines, and the photographer's got to get in there and, for social media, even though her social media feed, like Ben Bradley said, doesn't have much on the trips, on the conferences, because did they just party like rock stars? Probably. It's some shenanigans in the hotel rooms, which shall remain, crazy stuff, right? The village also released records relating to Henyard's village vehicles. Copies of the 3 leases allegedly signed by Henyard show the luxury SUVs cost residents more than $374,000. Now, I had I've been talking about a way higher number than that. And I also, at one point, was under the understanding there was 4 vehicles. So it was 3 Tahoes, hence Tahoe Tiff. And then I think it was a Ford Explorer, maybe an Expedition or something like that. But I was under the impression that it was way more than $374,000. Although within those statements in the video, one of the vehicles did have an invoice for $149,000. And that was the Tahoe that went from base retail price of, call it $100K. And then after all the fees and the financing, bumped it up to $149,000, almost $150,000. So any which way, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on Tiffany Henyard's entourage. She is literally running around like the show Entourage. I mean, just she's got that whole Nino Brown thing, entourage, and she's just rock star, living like large. Got my own charity, even though she's going to claim it's not my charity. Somebody else stole my identity, and they just for clickbait they want to put Tiffany Henyard on there. And even though there's videos on Tiffany Henyard's Cares Foundation webpage, Facebook, showing her. Yeah, we showed that yesterday in yesterday's live stream, how involved she was. And this is her foundation. But now it's not. It's whole thing, right? In a recent interview with WGN Investigates, Henyard's attorney, Bo Bradley, we saw him talk about just basically stating that it was done at Freeman's direction. All right, let's go ahead and throw Freeman under the bus, Keith Freeman. He's kind of he's the administrator of this stuff. Let's just throw him under the bus because he's already under investigation for bankruptcy fraud, right? Just alongside with Tiffany Henyard, the super mayor's deputy police chief, Louis Lacey. He's also on bankruptcy indictment for fraud. So, if you got somebody that's already down, you can just beat him down a little further. It's Keith Freeman's problem. He told the super mayor that this kind of spending was okay. You know what? If you get into politics and you get elected mayor, you have just basically a responsibility to your taxpayers to not F things up the way that she has. Somebody did it. Whether you're passing the buck to Keith Freeman or whomever, super mayor is just brushing off responsibility left and right, right? Just, it's not my problem. Bing! Lands on Keith Freeman, Keith Freeman has stated that he is cooperating, but not with the FBI. So he's not a federal informant. Wink, wink, right? Who knows? But odds are that's happening. So it's easy to just throw Keith Freeman under the bus. He's not going to say anything other than, I'll comply and do whatever you need to because I don't want to go to prison. I mean, I get that. I mean, that makes absolute sense. So let's blame this on Keith Freeman. This is Keith Freeman's idea to go to Vegas. This is Keith Freeman's idea to have 10 hotel rooms in Illinois. I think it was Central Illinois, somewhere there. It was north of Chicago, I believe. Let's go ahead and have 10 hotel rooms. It's party time. Let's get down. Let's go to Ruth Chris Steakhouse. Let's get some food. And then when we come back, we'll do some Amazon shopping and we'll go to Walgreens and then we'll go get some cowboy hats when we're in Texas. Freeman has been charged in federal court with bankruptcy fraud. He could not immediately be reached for comment. Not shocking, right? WGN Investigates shared its findings with Kelly Richmond Pope. She's a DePaul University professor, has investigated municipal spending. I'm just shocked a leader would think that they can get away with this type of behavior and no one is going to ask them about it, she said. Well, you know what? It's true. That was true. Nobody really asked about it until recently. They've been asking, but not that to that point of, hey, what are you doing? And forcing the issue, because I don't think most of these folks are in a position where they've had to do that kind of thing. All right, we got to sue these, we got to sue these people. That's standard business. You don't get, what you should be able to get from a Freedom of Information Act request and you're just being stonewalled. Then you go to a judge. Yeah, you got to spend some money. And it was Nexstar Media, who owns WGN, the employer here of Ben Bradley. And this wasn't just Ben Bradley. This is Ben Bradley, Andrew Schroeder, and BJ Lutz. They put this together. And so it's a really well done story, and all the hyperlinks were here. So that's why I'm, continuing this story, because all the bits and pieces are starting to come together. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out was that, okay, so we got 33,000 to the village of Dalton, and then we've got 66 and change to the township of Thornton. And that's because the township of Thornton is so much of a bigger entity than Dalton. Dalton's got a couple million coming in a month for, towards its budget. It's got revenue like that. with a budget of somewhere around 30 million. I don't remember what the exact numbers are on Township of Thornton, but there's way more money coming in and way more money going out in Township of Thornton. So you can hide more expenses. If you're going to spend money, you're going to, 2/3 of them are going to come from the Township of Thornton, and then 1/3 are going to come from Village of Dalton. So that's why you've got this disparity between the two amounts that are being spent. And I think it makes sense. Also, Tiffany Henyard is she's the mayor of Dalton. So she's had carte blanche spending. She could just do whatever the F she wanted. And she knew that she probably wasn't going to get called out on it until now. So she got called out, basically 9 months ago. That time frame may be way off, but in November, she's being called out by Ben Bradley. And, and she's like, no comment. And that's when I started kind of cluing into, man, that is the weirdest exchange, because either she is just a straight up criminal and she's hiding stuff, or she's really awkward. And it's a combination, or extremely brazen, like the ending comment here is, I'm just shocked a leader would think that they can get away with this type of behavior and no one's going to ask them about it. Well, people on the peripheral, the media has been asking about it, but I don't think the township and I don't think the Village of Dalton have ever had to go down these roads before. And why would you? I mean, you would, kind of expect things to be on the up and up. But in Chicago politics, doesn't seem that way, right? Because this is not the first story to come out of Chicago or Illinois, for that matter, along these lines. There is just a history of these kind of shenanigans taking place, right? I mean, it's just a known quantity. So what happens next? What goes forward from here? So we know they spent a bunch of money. Well, we're still waiting around. Like if you watch the video with Ben Bradley, the federal investigation continues to roll on. So that's essentially what we're waiting for. We're waiting for that boom, that gavel to drop, whatever it is that they're going to do, however they're going to proceed. And I've seen a lot of different things, a lot of different people's opinions on what is actually going to happen. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe we bring accountants in, and maybe they've got FBI accountants going through it right now, doing a fully audited deep dive on, the books. Whatever form of books they have, they're actually probably going to have to create a set of books, because it doesn't sound like the Village of Dalton has anything that actually equates to a set of books where you can go through and, figure out a paper trail of the money, because they're not even reporting receipts, which are, the basics of, so you give somebody a receipt and they will, if you didn't get paid for it, then you get reimbursed. You got to have receipts to prove what you did. And those have to be itemized to a trip or an event or an expense. And you got to, document all that, because this isn't their money, but they're treating it like it is. So $100,000. Yeah, there's an additional 33 that we didn't know about. And because of WGN's investigative reporting, now we know. And now we know that Tiffany Henyard and co. were okay with billing both entities, both Dalton and Township of Thornton, for what can only be an event for probably one or the other, because one is township business and the other is mayor business. And, the two don't overlap necessarily, but we don't even know what kind of conferences they attended. So we have no idea how this will go down. But I'm sure after trying to blame everybody, maybe they're going to try and blame Stan. I was just riding a bike for something. And he's going to, no, but, I'm kind of joking, but, they're going to play that blame game and see who else they can get involved. But how many other folks are going to get indicted for bankruptcy fraud in this whole scheme before things go wildly sideways and we end up with some arrests? I mean, that has got to be coming at some point in time here. But it appears the FBI is going to take its time. And I've heard it could take, a couple of years for one of these investigations to go. I don't think it will, because I think there's been enough wrongdoing where you're going to have some action by the authorities. So you want to make sure you stay tuned to News for Reasonable People. Love to have you subscribe if you haven't already. Do all that good stuff. And every time one of these topics comes up, if I'm around, I'll live stream it. So look for me. And thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you on the next one. Bye for now.